So you're thinking of buying an electric car, but you're worried, how do I charge it? One of the most common ways people see charging in the wild are stations like these. This is an Electrify America at a mall. Oftentimes they're Walmarts, Targets, areas like that. Tesla superchargers exist for Tesla vehicles, and there are other networks. Sometimes you may have a free plan with your new vehicle, and you might think, oh, I should take advantage of that and charge here all the time. Well, one, it's expensive if you don't have that free plan, and even if you do, when you show up to these stations, they can be unreliable. It adds time to your day. It's not like filling up with gas. Depending on your car's battery state, the temperature of the weather outside, all kinds of variables, you could take half an hour to an hour to charge, and that's a lot to add to your routine every few days. The best way really is to charge at home, but not all of our home situations are identical. So the most convenient option is something like this, where you have a charger set up. If you have a garage or a driveway, I rent, and this is my setup. Maybe not the smartest idea that I paid to install a charger, but if you're a homeowner, this can make a ton of sense. You can combine it with solar. There's all kinds of federal incentives to get an EV charger, and then you just charge your electric car overnight in your driveway. That's easy, right? But that's not a lot of people. Many people live in multi-unit dwellings, condos, and apartments, whether you own or rent, where you share a parking lot and your parking space isn't right next to where you live. Well, installing a charger in that situation is more complicated, so let's talk about options there. Many folks live in situations like this. These here are shared apartments, and obviously you have a shared parking lot. This can apply whether you're renting or maybe you own a space, a unit, a condo, something like that. Well, this site, these apartments specifically for renters, have these installed charge points. These are what are called network chargers, super convenient. Many newer buildings and developments have them, so if you're in a position where you're looking to move or you haven't settled in yet, consider this when you are shopping around for apartments. The newer the place, the more likely they are to have them. Also, building laws in many states and federally are basically encouraging the adoption of infrastructure that thinks ahead of time, wiring to make this stuff easier to install in the first place. The issue is, right, older buildings, people who live in older units, it's a bit more complicated. I would say if you rent, this is going to be a very complicated process. You have to be highly motivated, and it may not be in your best financial interest to pursue getting a charger in your parking spot. If you are a condo owner and you live in certain states like Colorado, New York, or Connecticut that have what are called right to charge laws, then you might actually have a lot of protections for getting a charger installed and not basically being protected from being charged extra fees by your HOA or your landlord, whomever it may be. If you're not in one of these states, though, check your HOA bylaws, because lots of HOAs are making provisions to allow you to install EV chargers. So basically what I'm saying is this is possible if you don't already have this set up. If it's a private space, you could get what's called a non-network dumb charger. Those are fairly cheap. Companies like Enphase make those, and those are going to be actually fairly affordable. The charging station part of the equipment is not the expensive part. The expensive part is going to be the wiring, the infrastructure, and all of that. And you could get an assessment, but I would expect to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,000, if not more. Some of this you may be able to claim as a tax credit federally, and you may be eligible for some utility incentives. But again, if that sounds complicated to you, that's because it is. This is going to require a lot of work. So this is option one. You can absolutely do this, especially if you're an owner in a multi-unit dwelling. It's great to see states adopting more progressive laws towards protecting this, but you got to be motivated. It takes some legwork. It takes some paperwork. There's a lot into it. So let's talk about some options for charging outside the home. 10 cents a kilowatt hour, that's pretty cheap. That's because this is a workplace charger. And honestly, the place you spend most of your time when you are not at home is probably work. And so we're here at an office park in Boulder, and you can see, right, these charge point stalls are here. Many workplaces, institutions of higher learning, for those of you who are students, or schools, for those of you who are teachers as well, are installing chargers as a courtesy to their employees and people who work there. And I think it makes a lot of sense. If you don't have a charger at home, you can charge at work. You're going to be spending 6, 8, 10 hours anyways, and that's plenty of time to fill up most vehicles. Do make sure, of course, that you don't come in at near your charge limit and occupy most of the day taking up a charger. There are, in many cases, instead of just charging spots, spaces EVs can park at that are preferred for EVs. Like they have dedicated EV parking back over there. And I think that's a really cool option too, to encourage EV adoption and also tell you that, you're not always going to be charging with an EV depending on how much you drive. It may only be once every 2 or 3 days, but for the 9 to 5 crowd, people who do go to an office or a school or somewhere every day to study or work, this makes so much sense and can honestly substitute the place of a home charger. The easiest way to find chargers for the next options we'll talk about in this video is going to be with an app called PlugShare. You can download it on your iPhone with the App Store, on your Android phone with the Google Play Store, it will install PlugShare, open it up, and it's also a website, by the way, so you can access it on the computer. We'll link their website in their app. You can see a map of charging stations, and there's all kinds of them, but you want to filter specific charging stations because we're talking about situations where you want to be charging for several hours, not DC fast charging as we outlined for the issues that has earlier in this video. So with PlugShare, you've got the map. You can also toggle to a list view in this upper right option and see nearby chargers. That way, you can go into any specific charger, like one of the ones that we'll actually visit later in this video, scroll down and see recent check-ins to make sure it's quality. But to find chargers, I recommend using a filter. And so you'll go to the map view and you'll hit this filter option here. And on the filter, you'll want to select 2 kinds of receptacles. You'll want to select J1772 and Tesla, not Tesla fast. It's kind of confusing, but basically these are the kinds of chargers you use for slower charging. Because I'm using my colleague's phone, he already has his vehicle inputted here, so it's selecting the compatible ones, but you don't have to add in your vehicle. Just select J1772 and Tesla. You can only select one of these if you don't have the adapter, but there are adapters you can go between either one of these ports in your community. So if you're regularly using chargers that are on a different brand, you have a Tesla, you use chargers that are J1772 or vice versa, I just recommend getting an adapter. We'll link in adapters for both directions as well. I'm going to select both kinds of outlets here. And there's other amenities you can select as well. You can select chargers that are free as well, but I'm just gonna, use those filters, and I can see all the locations here in the map that are eligible. The ones that are green are available. The ones that are gray are unavailable, and that is essentially PlugShare. It's going to be super useful for finding all the kinds of chargers we'll talk about in the rest of this video. Your community might have something looking like this, whether it's by ChargePoint or Blink. Basically, these are network chargers. These specific ones are free. Oftentimes they are free or low cost. We are at the Boulder DMV, but in Boulder specifically, these are also found at libraries, rec centers, and gyms, and even a popular trailhead here called Chautauqua. So in your community, it may vary, but the library, gyms, rec centers, I think are pretty universal. Even churches and places of worship may occasionally have these. The nice thing, like I said, these are low cost or free usually. However, just respect the signage when you see these. So in this case, there's these parking bollards here, but they let you know these are public. But because this is a parking lot used by the county, you can see that over there is actually dedicated parking. There's some signage saying it's basically not for the public, and those are fleet vehicles that are being charged on different posts there. So just make sure you are parking somewhere that is publicly accessible. PlugShare can also make this known. Usually it's in the status there, but as long as you make sure you're okay to be there, respect that. Sometimes there's time limits, 4 to 6 hours. Just make sure also your vehicle isn't close to 100% battery because you don't want to be occupying a charging spot while you are not drawing any power. Once you are fully charged, you can park anywhere else, but leave that spot open for the next person to charge. It's a nice resource that many communities are adopting, and as long as you use it responsibly, I think these can work really well. In addition to public options, lots of private businesses like this great brewery in my neighborhood, Avery Brewing Company, shout out to them, have installed their own chargers as a courtesy to customers. So you can see they've installed both Tesla chargers and non-Tesla chargers. These ones provided by a company called Clipper Creek that was bought by one called Enphase. Doesn't really matter too much, but these usually are just simple kind of dumb chargers that you plug in. You don't need to pay to authenticate. Sometimes they're paid, but usually the businesses figure, hey, you're spending several hours in here. If it's a brewery, a movie theater, center or mall, something like that. It's a nice courtesy to customers. The electricity is fairly cheap to them, and it's not too much for them to install these chargers. So if it's a native Tesla charger and you have a Tesla like my colleague's car here, it's very easy to just plug in. If for Tesla owners, though, many chargers that are in public are a different standard that's used by every other electric car currently on the market in the US. You can get an adapter for your Tesla. You can also get an adapter for your non-Tesla car to go into the Tesla connector. You can do it both ways when we're talking about this slower charging that's not DC fast charging. The situation that I'd recommend getting the other adapter is for hotels and lots of businesses that do have the Tesla charging stations, though more often than not, I think you'll find these more commonly, which are that more common J1772 receptacle, as we call it. But basically, right, just two different standards. They're very cross-compatible. You can easily adapt to either one. And businesses that do have these public chargers are great. Again, you can find them on PlugShare. You can get to know the ones in your community, support them. Obviously, if you're using their charging, go and buy a beer, see a movie, do whatever it is you're going to do. And the ones that maintain their chargers and have high quality chargers, it's always appreciated. You can see by their signage here, of course, this is for customers. We're here before they opened. We're not having beer this early in the day, but I always love it when businesses have chargers, and I see it more and more commonly all the time. Hopefully that's given you something to think about. Basically, don't despair. There are possibilities if you live in a multi-unit dwelling or an apartment to charge, be it pursuing getting charging stations installed for your parking space or charging elsewhere like at work, at public sites, libraries, private businesses, as we've explored in this video. Of course, there are other challenges. Many people live in cities where curbside parking is a big deal. And then, of course, charging options have to be different there. States like New York, cities like New York in the US have explored this. I explored this in European cities like Paris that are doing it. So check that out. So challenges like that exist. And if there are topics you think we didn't bring up in this video or that are really a common kind of, stumbling point or just, obstacle to EV adoption for people who live in different kinds of urban and shared environments, please let us know. Hopefully, though, this has helped kind of broaden your horizons a little bit to show that charging can really be done in all kinds of places. And I think it should be done in all kinds of places. I'm hoping we see more chargers everywhere, and that we also learn to distinguish as a society between charging an EV and parking it, because I see all the time EVs that are parked, not charging, EVs that are charging or plugged in, but are full on charge and just occupying a parking space that could be used by someone to charge. There's confusion there. So we're gonna have to figure that out, how to best optimize space, resources, electricity, and all of it. But it's all possible. I'm optimistic about it. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts and your points of concern here. I've been Max without a Spec Guide. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.